Welcome to the Partis channel. Today we explain Exodus chapter 21 in a clear and simple way, step by step.
Okay, let's dive right into our roadmap for today. We're going to break down the specific, highly practical rules of ancient civil law found in this chapter, looking at everything from servitude and human rights to how the ancient world handled intentional versus accidental harm.
So, to really get what's happening, we have to start right at the beginning of the chapter to establish our context.
If you remember, the Israelites literally just experienced these massive, earth-shattering events at Mount Sinai. I mean, thunder, lightning, receiving the 10 Commandments, the whole shebang. But then, we hit verse 1 of chapter 21, and God says, "These are the laws you are to set before them." Just like that, boom, we shift from the grand cosmic heavens right down into the gritty dirt streets of everyday life. We are moving away from sweeping theological declarations to the highly specific nuts and bolts rules required to actually run a functional, fair society. You know, the practical details of how people live, work, and resolve their everyday conflicts.
And the very first issue this new legal code tackles, the laws surrounding Hebrew servants.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how the text immediately slaps strict boundaries and time limits on the practice of servitude. Keep in mind, in the ancient Near Eastern world, slavery and indentured servitude were incredibly common. It was just a brutal economic reality. People did it to pay off crushing debts, or maybe just to survive a famine. But right out of the gate, this biblical code drops something completely revolutionary. Verse 2 says, "If you buy a Hebrew servant, he is to serve you for 6 years, but in the 7th year he shall go free without paying anything." This is absolutely crucial. It acts as a profound economic safeguard. The system literally has a mandatory, non-negotiable path to freedom built right into its core. 6 years of hard labor, and then you walk away on the 7th year, completely free of charge. No ongoing debt, no strings attached whatsoever.
Well, what happens when family gets involved? Verse 3 builds on this by making a really clear legal distinction based on the servant's marital status when he first enters servitude. It's actually pretty straightforward. If he comes in alone, meaning he was single when he signed the contract, he goes free alone in that 7th year. But if he comes in with a wife, meaning they face this harsh economic reality together as a unit, the law fiercely protects that bond. When his 6 years are up, she walks out right alongside him. The family stays intact.
However, verse 4 introduces a much more complex reality, and we kind of have to put on our ancient history glasses to fully grasp it. What if the master provides a wife for the servant during those 6 years and they have kids? The law states that the woman and her children remain the master's property when the man is released. Since the man's 6-year term is up, by law he has to go free, but he goes alone. Why? Because the master provided the wife and sustained that family unit entirely at his own expense and under his own roof. So the family acquired during that specific time legally stays behind.
Which naturally leads us to a huge dilemma. What if the servant just can't bear to leave his family behind? Or maybe he realizes, hey, I actually have a much more secure, better life here with my master. Verses 5 and 6 outline a highly specific 3-step legal procedure if a servant willingly chooses to stay for life. Step 1, the servant has to formally, clearly declare his love for his master, his wife, and his kids, stating out loud that he does not want his freedom. Step 2, they can't just shake on it privately in the kitchen. The master has to bring him before the judges to legally and publicly ratify this permanent choice. And step 3, the servant's ear is pierced right there at the door or doorpost of the house.
Let's pause on that last part, because the Hebrew text mentions a very specific tool for this, an awl. It's basically a small, sharp-pointed tool that you'd normally use to punch holes in thick leather or wood. By using this awl to pierce the ear against the doorpost, a permanent physical mark is made. It really helps us visualize just how profound this commitment is. The servant is permanently, literally attaching himself to that specific household, and that mark on his ear becomes this constant, public symbol of his voluntary choice to stay.
Okay, moving right along, let's look at how the text outlines protections for female servants.
In the ancient world, women faced some incredibly unique vulnerabilities, and the next block of verses addresses this head-on with a completely different set of rules. Verse 7 states, if a man sells his daughter as a servant, she is not to go free as men's servants do. Now, at first glance, that might sound harsh, but to get this simple meaning here, context is everything. Back then, female servants were often sold by deeply impoverished families with the explicit expectation that she would actually marry into the master's family, either to the master himself or maybe to his son. Because of this whole marriage expectation, she wasn't just a standard day laborer, so she operated under a totally unique set of legal protections.
So what happens if that expected marriage just falls through? Verse 8 explains that if the master is displeased with her and doesn't marry her like he was supposed to, he has officially broken faith with her. That original contract was completely conditional on marriage and integration into the family. Since he didn't hold up his end of the bargain, he can't just toss her out. She must be allowed to be redeemed, which means her freedom can be bought back by her family. And here's the kicker: it is strictly forbidden for him to sell her off to foreigners. Even when the arrangement falls apart, her basic human rights and her secure place among her own people are fiercely protected.
And it's honestly brilliant how the law adapts to protect her no matter what happens. Let's compare the shifting rules in verses 9 and 10. If the master selects her to marry his son, the law demands that he treat her with all the legal rights of a freeborn daughter. She's instantly elevated to full family status. But if the master marries her himself and then later decides to take a second wife, his financial and marital obligations to her absolutely do not disappear. He is legally forbidden from depriving that first wife of her basic everyday needs.
And what exactly are those basic needs? Verses 10 and 11 spell out 3 absolute rights: food, clothing, and marital rights. These are fundamental. They are unbreakable. If the master drops the ball and fails to provide even one of these 3 things, boom, there's an immediate consequence. Her servitude is instantly canceled, and she walks away totally free without paying a single dime. She owes nothing. It's a built-in safety net. If her basic dignity and survival aren't honored by the master, the whole contract is completely voided.
Next, we're shifting gears from household laws to the incredibly strict codes concerning violence and physical harm in the wider community.
Verse 12 lays down a very straightforward, no-nonsense baseline. Anyone who strikes a man and kills him shall surely be put to death. This establishes severe, equal accountability for taking a human life. It sets the absolute highest penalty for the ultimate crime. And really, it just goes to show the supreme, undeniable value that the text places on human life.
But, as always, context is key. The very next verse, verse 13, adds a vital layer of justice by asking, what was the intent? If it was premeditated, intentional murder, the penalty is death. But what if it was a tragic accident? If he didn't mean to do it, but as the text phrases it, God lets it happen, then that unintentional killer is allowed to flee to a designated safe haven so he doesn't just get killed out of immediate hot-blooded revenge. And honestly, this idea of intent and negligence drives the rest of the chapter. From verse 14 all the way to 36, the text goes step by step through different scenarios. It outlines severe penalties for kidnapping or striking a parent. It introduces the famous eye for an eye principle, which was actually meant to ensure compensation perfectly matched the injury, so that vengeance didn't spiral out of control. It even gets into property negligence, like, what if you leave a pit uncovered and your neighbor's animal falls in? Or what if your ox goes crazy and gores somebody? Across all these verses, the text systematically breaks down who pays, what is owed, and why your intent and your carelessness matter so deeply.
Before we wrap up today, let's take a quick step back and look at the big practical life lessons we can extract from this. When you really boil down these ancient verses, you find some incredibly powerful, even modern-sounding concepts. First, we see strict limits on power. Even in a society with servitude, endless exploitation was flat-out illegal. Second, the establishment of inalienable human rights. Food, clothing, and shelter were absolute musts, no matter your status. Third, we see a highly sophisticated legal system that distinguishes based on intent, ensuring accidents aren't punished like murders, and that people take real responsibility for their property. And finally, weaving through every single rule is the supreme value of human life. These laws demanded accountability, protected the most vulnerable among us, and made sure justice wasn't just some blind, angry revenge.
So we leave you with this question to ponder. How do these ancient principles of accountability and limitations on power continue to shape our modern views of everyday justice? Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.